Tinder wants you to keep failing at dating, so you can keep paying to use their app. Men pay to use the app. If you're wondering, like, why would anybody want to do this? All of it's because of money. If you suck at your dating life, they keep making money off of you. That's why they changed the model.
There, my handsome and pretty little Cobras, and welcome back to the Cobras Nest. For those of you who are new, my name is Mignon Cobra, and I make minimalism videos. So today's minimalism video is actually going to be an interesting one, and that is my Gen Z Cobra babies. Your future isn't messed up. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 things that I think can kind of help comfort some of my younger subscribers. I realized that the majority of my subscribers are Gen Z, and I realized that from the things that I have seen on TikTok, y'all are pretty depressed and scared for the future, and I really don't blame you because I was for a period of time. I've entered the workforce at the same time most of my fellow Gen Zers have, so I know exactly what kind of fears you guys have and what I can offer up from my take, from the perspective of a millennial. I'm about 10 years older than you guys. I can give you guys a little bit of peace of mind that everything is going to be okay and that your future isn't messed up. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. Let's get it, let's go. Woo. So recently I was on TikTok and I kind of saw this interesting TikTok. It was saying that the reason that Gen Z is depressed is because you're the only gen that has not been given a future. You guys are worried about, the housing. Housing is out of control. You've been told not to go to university, but at the same time, how are you supposed to get a job? You've been told don't do a job, don't do a 9 to 5. You can't afford children. You've been told don't get married, use Tinder, sleep around like some sort of free prostitute. It is pretty depressing what some of the garbage that has been fed to Gen Z. And I'm going to tell you guys that you guys don't need to worry, because you know what? The garbage that's being fed to the Gen Z is what the upper class was feeding the poor class. I guess they just realized that feeding this garbage to the poor was kind of a waste. There was no money to steal from. But Gen Zers are mostly children of boomers who actually have money, so it's easier to brainwash Gen Z than it is to keep attacking the poor. So number 1, don't sleep around. When I grew up, it was a very common trope that the Latina was a promiscuous girl. She should be free. Don't copy the oppressed white woman who has to marry and submit to a man. You are free, girl. Sleep around. Live in your sexuality. I was like, that is some terrible advice, and I'm so glad I didn't listen to that garbage, because I actually went to an upper middle class school and I saw that they have family nuclear units. But why are they telling us to do it, but they don't do it themselves? I've just learned from a young age, don't listen to what people say, look at what people do. So I realized that no, sleeping around is probably not a good idea. Tinder is also part of the problem, I'd have to say. When I started using dating apps, it used to be like an email system. You would see all of the profiles and you'd click the profile that you liked, it was on the computer, and then you would send them an email. I know that's just so different from how the way that Tinder does it. Tinder does it in a stack platform where if you swipe on somebody, you can never go back to them. I was like, what a terrible way to choose. You literally have a second to choose if you like or do not like them, versus the way that it was before was you could look at everybody's profile and you could decide who you liked. So definitely online dating has definitely changed. I met my significant other with online dating. It was a completely different world. It might have been the sweet spot of online dating. It was still kind of forbidden and taboo at the time. For the longest time, I've been telling people I met him at school. We had actually met online, and we're gonna be married next year, so we've been together for almost 10 years. And Tinder is definitely a problem. I do not recommend using Tinder. I think Tinder is definitely garbage. I don't recommend it at all, because honestly it propagates this notion that you should be sleeping around, and to be a hot girl is to sleep around. And this is not just a girl problem, it's also a guy problem. You think you're a Chad because you're sleeping around. Let me just tell you, that is a lie that the upper class uses to destabilize the lower class, and I guess in this case to destabilize. Because think about it, Tinder wants you to keep failing at dating, so you can keep paying to use their app. Men pay to use the app. If you're wondering why would anybody want to do this, all of it's because of money. If you suck at your dating life, they keep making money off of you. That's why they changed the model. I paired up with my significant other in a month, and then I never used the platform ever again. If you're wondering what I used OkCupid. They have probably changed their platform too. They just realized it makes no sense to actually pair people up, so they systemically make it so that no one pairs up properly. They give full access to the Chads to sleep around with all the women and turn all the women pretty much into free prostitutes, because he just sleeps with you and that's just it, and you're being empowered, but he's literally just using you. And then the Chad has a bunch of women, and so he doesn't want to commit, and then he wonders why he hates his life. It is a shit show. So my opinion on all of this is you shouldn't sleep around. I mean, yeah, go ahead, date, but don't sleep around. They're using you, you're using them.
Nobody's winning. It's just messing up the whole dating field. That is a lie that they gave. They told blacks and Latinas, they're like, you know what? You should be empowered and free and sleep around. Do you think that being a baby mama is a good idea? Like, I'm not here hating on baby mamas. And I just thought to myself, I was like, I don't want that for myself. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to be irresponsible with my womb. Be strong and don't use it, because you're not winning at all with Tinder. Just date around in real life. You will be fully more satisfied. You may not get that stud that TikTok tells you should have, but are you really winning with the way things are going right now? Probably not. Okay, the next major lie that they're feeding you is that you need to own a house. I don't even know how to unpack this, so I will start nice and slow. The bank wins when you buy into the lie that you need to be a successful and self-realized individual by owning a house. So I'll just use my own personal example for this. So for the most part of my entire life, I have lived in government housing because we grew up on welfare. And then my mom she became a nurse. We finally were high income, and so she bought a house. And a house is definitely a middle class trap. I mean, yes, if you come from poverty and you finally own a house, like I definitely respect that. Like, I'm not here knocking it. And for me, the thing that really changed all of these perspectives, like not only seeing it in my own life, but actually something that I learned from Rich Dad Poor Dad. So one thing that really resonated with me was this big emphasis that he put on the fact that if you live in your house is not an asset. The bank will tell you it's an asset. It is not an asset. And I think I can tell you that a lot of homeowners, and like, unless you rent it, it's a money drain. And yes, it appreciates in value, blah, 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 all that stuff. But like, it takes a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of hidden costs, the cost of it. Another thing is like, renting is not throwing money down the drain. That's another thing. The upper class, they rent. They own houses that they don't live in, and they rent that out to somebody else. And then they themselves rent in a nice place because they're just like, why would I do it? You have value as a person, and your value doesn't come from the fact that you own a house, regardless of what, social media will tell you or the bank will tell you. And the other thing is, you shouldn't really compare yourself with boomers. Boomers bought these houses dirt cheap. You will never experience that. And that's not to say like, oh, boo-hoo us, because I'm in that too. I don't own a house. But it's just understanding that like, they bought these houses for like dirt cheap. It was an investment for them, but it is a life sentence for you. Don't feel bad. And that actually brings us into the next point, is that every generation has their own struggles. Boomers are considered the golden era. They didn't have to go to war like their parents, and they got everything on the cheap, unlike us. So I just don't think that you should be comparing yourself with boomers and the success that boomer has. I see all of these like money gurus on TikTok, and it is just so embarrassing because they are boomers and they are so blind to their own privilege that it's just like, I'm the gen below boomers, so just don't. They made their money. They're like Rich Dad Poor Dad. As much respect as I have for Robert Kiyosaki, he made his money off of selling the book, which is fine. I can respect that. Like, I'm not here hating on it. It's just being aware. So the other thing that I want to mention is that in addition to every gen having their own struggle, don't look at boomers, but look at the boomers' parents. They were called the silent gen. They had to go to war. So don't feel bad. At least you don't need to go to war. Like, that is something that I feel very privileged, because as an immigrant, my parents came from countries that were war torn, and sometimes you don't really understand your privilege until you see other things. And that's why I'm a big advocate for traveling and seeing the world, is seeing that there's other cultures that live differently from you. So you have a lot of freedom here in Canada and maybe America. Yes, I know it's like you're not really free in the matrix and blah 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 blah, but in terms of as far as freedoms go, in terms of countries, because I used to live in China, and I'm not going to say a lot about China in terms of but you have a lot of freedoms in Canada and America, and I think that is something that is a blessing. So yeah, don't compare yourself with the older gen. There's really no point. I mean, you can't go back in time, and you aren't them, you're you. So yeah, don't compare yourself with that gen. The other things that I want to say is that unlike that gen, you actually have your own assets, and that is my third point, or I guess my fourth point, is that tech is your biggest asset. I know that sounds really weird. They had to grind in 9-to-5 jobs up until they were 60 to get where they are now. You have the capacity to do that in like a quarter of the time. I know that you see that on TikTok, and it's like, get rich quick fast, but that is actually your biggest asset. You have tech, you have accessibility, you have broadcasting. And that's actually something that when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad many years ago, about 10 years ago, and he's definitely ahead of his time, there was a part in the book, and then nobody seems to talk about this, but was the thing that changed my life, was that he was like, there's an abundance of wealth of money, and the people who are going to capitalize the most on that is going to be the digital natives. People who live, breathe the digital era will be far wealthier, far faster than anything that we could possibly imagine. And that really spoke to me, because that's that's why I started my YouTube channel, because that's where the future is at. Your biggest asset is tech. You can drop ship and you can YouTube and Instagram. You should use the tech to build yourself up. Use it. Don't be a user. Some Latinos are very rich. Pablo Escobar, why? Because they sold the product. I mean, not to say let's drown our fellow people, but use social media to your advantage. Use YouTube to your advantage. Use technology to your advantage. Use your smartphone to your advantage. Don't let it run your life to the ground. Tech is your biggest asset. You should definitely be capitalizing on that. What you could see is a detriment, like, oh my God, like Gen Z are so obsessed with social media. No, you guys are amazing in social media. Use that to your advantage. Use that, capitalize on that. Look at Hazma. That guy blew up out of nowhere. Like, he's only 20 something and he makes more than doctors. I had to go to med school for 5 years and he's like making like so much money. So I think that you can use tech to live your best life. It was actually kind of like the Matrix principle. Everybody's obsessed with leaving the Matrix. I left the Matrix. I quit, hyperconsumption, consumerism, all of the social whatevers. And outside, if you've actually watched the Matrix, I think most Gen Z has not watched that movie. When Neo left the Matrix, you know what is outside of the Matrix? It's a horrible place to live. So you might as well live well in the Matrix. That's actually what the bad guy in the movie did. He sold Neo to the bad guys by telling them, put me back in the Matrix and make me rich in the Matrix. So that's what I want for my little Cobras. Let's actually just do well in the Matrix. The Matrix is not a terrible place to live. Everyone says wake up from the Matrix. Why don't we just do well in the Matrix instead? Because outside the Matrix is not that fun. Off the grid is kind of useless, I'll be completely honest. Okay, and the fifth thing that I want to say is that university, this whole idea of university, blah, 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 this and this and that. So university, sometimes you have to look at things historically speaking to understand the context at which it applies to you. So when I was going to go to university, it was uncommon for my, I guess, economic status and Latino status to go to university. University was more represented by like whites. To go to university was considered a privilege for my class. So for me, I almost didn't even make it to university. I was so low income, I needed government assistance to go to university. So at the time, me going to university was considered a privilege. But was it really? I incurred a lot of student debt that was something that left me really angry for a really long time. I was like, what was the point in the end? But the thing that I want to mention is that maybe university isn't for you, because you know what? Not everyone has gone to university, historically speaking. Boomers have gone to university, and Ivy Leagues people have gone to university before them, but the gen before that, they got along just fine and they didn't go to university. So maybe you're the new gen that doesn't need to go to university. Like, I'm not here saying that university isn't for you. I mean, that is something that you need to think for yourself. You could be like the silent gen. You can create your own world. Maybe this is your calling to make your dreams happen. And I know maybe this makes you feel like a little bit lost, and that actually brings me to the next point about being lost, is that like you may feel lost, but that's actually because you're the freest gen. And I think that you guys are free from the script. Boomers and millennials, we were fed this idea that we have to be, good citizens and a 9-to-5 and climb the corporate ladder and buy a house and have 2 kids and a dog. Everybody was told we had to follow that script. So it made us feel trapped. And so we decided we're not going to tell Gen Z that. We're going to tell you guys there's a life outside of that. But I think in some ways it kind of backfired and it made you guys feel kind of lost. And I don't blame you. You're lost, but that's only because you're free. Sometimes it's easier to go against something if they've already given you a template. Like, I don't want to do a 9-to-5. But when you're told, okay, you don't have to do a 9-to-5, you can do whatever you want, you're like, oh God, so what do I do then? There's literally there's no blueprint for you to follow, and I can understand how scary that is. So just kind of see it as a blessing. You're not lost, you're just free. So you're just gonna have to get a lot more creative and inventive, which is probably hard because there's like, what are you supposed to follow? What are you supposed to do? So don't feel bad. Take it slow. You guys are still young. You have a whole world, a whole life to figure out. And if you really do feel scared, there's really no shame in a 9-to-5. Like I like my 9-to-5. I'm my own boss and it's really not that bad. It's a lot better than when I was trying to be free and, minimalistic, and it was not the happiest way to live. I actually kind of do enjoy the structure. So Mr. Money Stash, my hero, became free with a 9-to-5. Like, let's not demonize things. We don't all have to be multimillionaires. Sometimes just being financially established and financially free is enough. You don't need to be a millionaire. In the chase of becoming a millionaire, you might actually financially screw yourself over because you start doing really stupid and reckless things. So as I would hate to be lost, and I know what that feels like. You're like in a limbo. In 2020, I was very lost, so I know what that feels like. So just create a little bit of structure for yourself, and I think that everything will be okay. So the last thing that I want to leave this note on, I know this video is like really long, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I think it's really interesting that Gen Z feels really like their future is messed up, because it's like can't afford a house, can't go to university, can't have kids, finding a significant other is just a mess. When I was 21, I dreamt of what your generation would have. I dreamt that your generation would be the most free generation. You guys would, the wealth of abundance of things that you could do. I thought you guys would live in the tech era and you guys would just be like amazing, and it would just be like, you know, we'd all be wearing like those goggles and we'd live in like a virtual reality world. Like, I just had such a positive idea of what I thought the future would be like, and I was just so jealous of the gen before me that they would grow up in that like digital abundance. Maybe go back and watch some 90s nostalgia stuff, because we were very optimistic for the future. I mean, yeah, maybe it ended up turning into like a Terminator situation where the robots are going to end up destroying us, but like, why don't we live in a golden era? Why don't we spin the narrative of being Gen Z as like the golden digital era? I think that if life can be anything we want it to be, as boomers love to preach, that like you can manifest it. Why don't we manifest that? Because that's what I did. I decided to I believed in that stuff, and it worked. Like, it actually worked. I live in a world of abundance because I decided to, be like, you know what? Yes, let's do this. And if that doesn't really work for you, that's okay. I just wanted to share this video as something that could definitely help calm your mind, because these are the things that helped calm my mind. And I figured I definitely have to tell Gen Zers that everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. Trust. Everything is going to be okay. So thank you so much for having taken the time to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.